Hello, I'm in front of Good Earth Food Co-op, and today we have the good fortune of having Community Business Connection sponsor a town hall style format in which the three Stearns County sheriffs will be in a panel discussion answering any questions we have. Steve Stoika, Dave Bentrud, and Bob Dickhouse are fortunate enough to join us, and let's go inside and check it out.
I can start. So my name is Steve Stoika, and I am obviously one of the three candidates sitting up here running for sheriff here in Stearns County. Just a little background about me and why I feel I'm a viable candidate. I am born and raised in St. Cloud, went to Cathedral, went to St. Cloud State and got my criminal justice degree, mostly because at the time it was the #4 place in the nation to get criminal justice degrees, so why leave town, I guess, and I was able to go home and do my laundry and steal food from my parents. So, after St. Cloud State, I got hired with Benton County Sheriff's Office in 1991 and switched over to Stearns County in 1996. So I've been sheriffing, if you would, since 1991, about 27 years or so. Just had an anniversary at the beginning of April. Done a lot of things within the department as far as experience, patrol officer, field training officer. Did a little time on the gang strike force, the statewide gang strike force, working on gangs in a plainclothes type situation. Was a detective for about 6 years. Under that, we had the medical examiner program, so we investigated all deaths in Stearns County. Investigated probably almost every kind of death there is in those 6 years, quite honestly. Got promoted to sergeant after that and ran our water patrol for 3 years. Transferred over to the Central Minnesota Violent Offender Task Force, which is a fancy name for our drug task force here. About the last 6 years, I started out as a team leader for a couple of years, and then was the commander for the last remaining years, I guess. And that's 8 agencies, 5 counties, multi-jurisdictional task force. And just recently with the interim sheriff, he believes in rotation. He rotated me back to the road here last November, so I'm back in uniform supervising a day shift. And I'm also the head of our Explorer program. I used to be an Explorer when I was at Cathedral, riding along with the deputies, and I felt it was important to give back, so I've been involved with the Explorer program ever since then. So that was everything.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. My name is Dave Bentrud. I'm a police chief in Waite Park. I've been there for 10 years. Prior to that, I spent 16 years with the St. Cloud Police Department. I grew up in Glenwood, out in Polk County, which isn't all that far, and I played a lot of sports back in the day. So back then we were in conference with Melrose and Sauk Center or Corey, so I got to know this area pretty well. We used to come over to swim in the quarries when we probably shouldn't have, trespassing, I'm not totally sure. But, so this area, I do this area pretty well, so when it came to getting a police job, it seemed like a natural place for me to go. I went to college at St. Thomas, played football there. I went there to be an accountant, but after a few semesters of that, I was like, I think criminal justice is more up my alley. So I got a degree in criminal justice. I didn't go into police work right away for some family reasons. I spent about 8 years in banking. I think there were some bankers here in the room. And so I have an appreciation for the customer service that goes along with what you do and as business owners. And I brought that philosophy, that attitude to my career as a police officer. Got a master's degree from St. Cloud State. I finished that in about '96, and I've taught part-time as an adjunct at St. Cloud State for 23 years. So I've had a foot in academia, and I was elected to the board of Minnesota Chiefs of Police Association. I'm currently second vice president of that association. I was appointed by Governor Dayton to the Post Board. I spent 5 years on the Post Board, which is the state licensing entity for peace officers in Minnesota. That was a great experience. And so I've seen law enforcement, obviously locally, as well as from the state level and from academia. And so I really enjoy what I do, and I'm very passionate about what I do. When I was with St. Cloud, I did a variety of things, a lot of patrol. I was SWAT for 12 years. When I left, I was team leader. And so, again, the last 10 years I've been in Waite Park.
I told her to do that, so nobody had to go.
I get it to stop.
It's locked up. You're turning red, Brenda.
You need some stress pills?
I think Jack, we have something.
Apologize, my phone's been blowing up. Obviously, you've seen the paper of the missing fellow in the river. So, being in charge of the dive team, that's one of my responsibilities, and they're really not letting me alone right now. So, anyway,
Last night?
Yeah.
yesterday.
Middle of the night?
No, it was yesterday afternoon.
Well, what was last night in the middle of the night?
It's St. Cloud. So,
A little more
could
than
be almost
St.
anything. So, to start off, my name is Bob Dickhouse, and I'm running for the office of Stearns County Sheriff. Special thanks to Katie for inviting me over today and to give me the opportunity to sit with Steve and Dave here and meet all you folks. So thank you very much. I appreciate the time you set aside for us. A little about myself. I'm born and raised in Melrose, Minnesota. I started there, I was born there, and I've been there ever since. I currently live there with my wife and 3 kids. Actually, 2 of them are grown up and gone to college, but I still have 1 at home. So I spend time pretty well intertwined with the community there. I'm a member of the Lions Club. But more about my law enforcement career. I started in law enforcement about 27 years ago as a police officer in actually in Freeport. Then I moved to Richmond and Cold Spring. After Cold Spring in 1993, I was hired by the Sheriff's Office as a correctional officer. And then in 95, I was promoted to position of patrol officer for the Sheriff's Office. And I've been with the Sheriff's Office ever since. I've worked a variety of positions there. I've been promoted up through the ranks. Patrol officer, patrol sergeant, detective, detective medical or deputy medical examiner, and now currently a lieutenant with the Sheriff's Office. So very exciting position. I love doing what I do. I've worked for 3 different sheriffs. Sheriff Castriba hired me, Sheriff Sanner. I was with him all about 14 years of his career or his sheriffship, I guess, I'm not sure what you call it. And now with Sheriff Don Goodmanson. And so I've had a wide variety of perspective on how to run a sheriff's office. Like I say, my current position as administrative lieutenant allows me to work very closely with Sheriff Goodmanson and the Chief Deputy John Lenz. We do budgeting, things of that nature, day-to-day operations. So my time is apparently up. Hopefully we'll get a chance to talk a little more about ourselves. Thank you.
Yeah. All right, so I gave these guys 5 questions that we kind of thought of last week, some of us. So first one is, what do you see are the biggest problems Stearns County faces right now? Bob, should we just keep doing this? Okay.
Well, I think one of the biggest problems we have, and other law enforcement agencies, and maybe even small business or large business, is getting people to do the job. Law enforcement is getting kicked around pretty hard in the last 3 or 4 or 5 years, kind of getting a bad name for itself, even though here in Stearns County, central Minnesota, we work hard every single day to do the best we can to serve the public in a professional and appropriate manner. We don't have a lot of problems in our departments and in this area. I mean, we were very fortunate, but staffing is a very big concern overall. I mean, it's a challenge to get people interested in law enforcement, corrections, things of that nature. Every day is a challenge. We're currently 8 people short in the jail. Back in '92, when I was trying to get hired with the Sheriff's Office, we lined up around Whitney Park, hundreds of us, to get a job in corrections and with the sheriff. I mean, literally hundreds of us, and now we're lucky we can get 5 or 10 people to apply. And the pay is pretty good, benefits are great, it's a retirement type job, but we're just really struggling to get more people to apply, really good people to apply, to look at it as a career. And because we have to look, as administrators, we have to look down the road. We can't look next 5 years. We're looking next 10 years and 15 years, and really for people to replace us. And we want to find the best people we can and work them through the system and through the ranks, so that when they're ready, when we're gone, they can take our position. So that's one of the biggest things. Thank you.
When I thought of that question, I thought about the survey that Stearns County did last fall, and some of you may have participated in that, and it asked for feedback in a variety of areas. But the number one issue that countywide was crime and public safety as a concern, and followed by roads, and I can't remember what the 3rd and 4th ones were, but And that didn't necessarily, so crime and public safety was either number one overall, and it was like either one or number two, depending on your commissioner district that you were in. So over the last several months, I think at this point I've met with 25 township boards, 8 city councils, 8 police chiefs, and I've basically asked the question, because what the survey really didn't drill down to is, what is it that about crime and public safety that causes you concern? And if I had to put it into consensus or some kind of a ranking, and I've also done 5 Cambridge Expo events and gotten feedback. I did a survey of my own to kind of drill down on that. The number one issue was drugs and opiate abuse from the survey that I did and the feedback that I've gotten. They're also, particularly in the rural areas, very concerned about property crime, burglary, and theft, including identity theft issues. You hear a lot about traffic and DUI situations. Some of the other things that are less obvious is, in my opinion, one of the big problems we have in this area is sex trafficking. There is a strong nexus between individuals who traffic women, and they also deal drugs and run guns, and they're extremely violent individuals. And so in Wade Park, and along with our other law enforcement partners, we've been aggressively trying to combat that problem. So there's a number of issues that have come out of the survey that folks are really concerned about. Family violence, domestic violence, and child abuse is very concerning to me. And we had a shaken baby situation in Wade Park a month or 2 ago that just really breaks your heart when you hear about those kind of things. So we've got some work to do in some of those areas.
Everything they said. No, I'm going to have to agree with them, and I would think any candidate that comes up here is going to agree with them. Law enforcement has many challenges. Our sheriff's office has many challenges. Those are some of them, obviously. I also believe that our communication with the public, this sheriff that came in has started a newsletter that's good for some transparency to get the word out. But I think our sheriff's office can do an even better job of getting with the public, getting more community oriented, I would call it. Say if I was elected sheriff, get out of the office and get out into the public to see what's going on, to get some feedback from you guys, from the citizens on what's going on. I would say we're seeing an increase in mental illness type calls, suicidal type calls. That's a challenge for our law enforcement. We go to school to be criminal justice. People go to work in the jail to be corrections. We're not counselors, we're not psychologists, but we're dealing with a lot of mental illness both in the jail and on the street. A lot of that critical incident, that kind of talking people down type stuff. That's a challenge, to get our officers through training on that. We have ended our DARE program at the sheriff's office as of May, which means we have no Stearns County influence, if you would, in any of the school system. I'm a proponent of child safety and the school safety thing. Especially in light of what's going on in the nation. There's been 19 school shootings since January 1st, to date, basically. That's incredible that that's happening in our schools. I'd like to start kind of like a school resource program, get that fired up and meet some of those challenges, because a lot, like Bob said, trying to find our future people in our department, those are also our future citizens, and we need to kind of make connections with them, at that level where they're at now to kind of get them, to be good citizens, I guess, for the most part. So, there's in law enforcement, there's many challenges, there's many different things going on. As a sheriff, you can't just think law enforcement, you have to think a lot of problem solving and community interaction and working collaboratively with the community to solve the problems.
Sorry. All right, so we'll start with Dave. Are there staffing needs in the sheriff's office? If so, what are they, and what do they need to be? Like, where are they, where should we be going?
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge in the sheriff's office, from what I've learned, is probably in the correctional officer area. And I think it's kind of the correctional officer staff, the transport officer program, campus or court security is probably an area where some efforts need to be made. I think, historically, I think the county has used the correctional officer position as a way to bring people into patrol. And, having been an instructor at state and knowing their criminal justice program and seeing a lot of students that may not necessarily be interested in law enforcement, but might be in corrections, I think I would look to try to recruit maybe a different type of correctional officer, somebody that maybe is more into the corrections, probation, maybe social work, if you will. Obviously, they need to have the skills to work a jail, so it can be challenging, no doubt, but maybe looking for more of a career type correctional officer. Do some things that maybe make the job a little more investigative. In intel, there's a lot of bad dudes in jail, and they talk, and so to try to gather some of that information and make the job a little more enriching and rewarding. When I was with St. Cloud, I was involved in training my whole career. I was a training sergeant for St. Cloud, and I've done a lot of training. I think I would look to get my command staff to some advanced leadership courses, FBI Academy or SPI, Southern Police Institute, or Staff and Command, Northwestern. I think that's an area that's been neglected as far as developing staff and equipping them for the task. Stearns is a big county, and there's a lot of personnel issues, and so that leadership training is another key staffing area. I think they've got a training sergeant now, but staff development, I guess my philosophy is that staff are assets to be developed, not potential liabilities to be managed. And there's a difference, because staff development, asset development, that's leadership. And I think we need to bring more of that to the staff within the county sheriff's office and equip them for the job. And I'll talk later that this job is becoming more than just law enforcement. Steve kind of talked about that. We need a different style of officers, deputies out there on the street.
I'm up? You're up. Well, just to build on, like I had said earlier, staffing is one of our major issues with the sheriff's office and public safety in general. Since Sheriff Goodmanson came, we did add a training sergeant and looking to different ways to develop officers and deputies and corrections officers to work their way up through the ranks to make them more comfortable and a little bit more vested in the department, as opposed to this is just a job, or not just as a job, this is an actual career, something I want to do. Corrections, as Dave said, is one of our biggest challenges right now. There's no corrections certification. There's not a course you go to be a corrections officer. So oftentimes it's kind of an on-the-job training position. So with that comes the lack of a degree requirement. Therefore, their pay is generally a little bit lower too. So I think we need to look at that, be able to develop those people into professional correctional officers, and maybe look into the school systems or the legislature to make that a certification so that we can get them a little bit more money to make that more potentially a better career plan. We have many correctional officers that have been there for 30 years. I mean, probably a third of them, and a few of them just retired. So it is a good position. It's just hard to get the younger people to recognize that and say, hey, you really need to work at this, and you get to retire when you're about 55. So, I mean, sometimes they don't see the writing on the wall, but overall, the sheriff's office has over 200 staff members. I think we're approved for about 209. So that includes, almost half of those are in the correctional section, which includes, court, campus security, the actual correction officers, process specialists, which are people under Sheriff Goodmanson, we just created a new position for a booking officer, if anybody's familiar with the booking process. That's probably the most technical part of the corrections position, is know how to book people. And that's just not writing their name down, it's running the NCIC, the background history, getting it in the system to make sure that all that information is correct and appropriate. That's one piece. We also have dispatchers. We have 25 full-time dispatchers, which, as Katie can tell you, is a challenge to keep those folks on staff. Once we get them, we can get them for 5 years, they'll stay forever, it seems like. Except for Katie snuck away there for a little bit. We snuck her back. Just a matter of time until I get her full-time again. So those, again, it's a wonderful position, extremely difficult and challenging. And it takes a very special person to do that job. And so we have to work with those folks and send us as much training as we possibly can to prepare them and to get them over that hump of 5 years or 3 years, whatever it happens to be, so we can get them, vested in the department. We created 5 new positions, as they're called lead positions. So there actually is two actual supervisors as well. So it gives them some place to go, something to look for the future, not to all, I'm a dispatcher now, I'll be dispatcher 30 years from now. No, there's places to go to build that career, to get in a position where you can affect change and share your ideas with other staff. So that, corrections, dispatch, we have civil process support, those are all challenging positions too. But then the patrol division. Patrol division is really the lifeblood of the sheriff's office. There's about 48 patrol officers out there driving around. Admittedly, I'll tell you, and I've said this to the 15 or 20 city councils I've talked to, they're the easiest bunch. Those are the ones that come out of school, they're super dedicated, they want to do the job. They love the position, and they're out there doing it every day. So really the easiest ones in the bunch. Fun to work with. It's one of the easiest groups to deal with. So overall, yeah, it's a challenge, but it's something that we can't overcome. We work on it every day. That's a big part of my job, is to make sure we're recruiting. We're sending people out to schools, trying to get them interested in the sheriff's office, literature, photographs, videos, Facebook, everything we can do. So, thank you.
All right. Number 3.
I think we skipped Steve.
Steve.
Oh, I'm sorry, Steve. Okay, sorry.
Although it's dang tough to go last.
What did he say?
Again, what they said. To just reiterate what they're saying, yes, we are short in the jail. At one point, I think we were about 23 short, to the point where we almost had to close a unit, or did close a housing unit for a short time, because we didn't meet DOC standards. That is back up. I think this sheriff has hired 3 part-time background investigators, which took the burden off of Bob and another lieutenant who had to try and collaterally duty that with the other stuff they had going on. That's all these people are doing, and my thought is, that's nice, because hopefully these background investigators are finding us kind of the best of the best, and going out and finding us the...
Yeah.
I'll see if I can dig myself out of it.
It's no fun going first either.
Two in a row, that's fine.
It's all right.
Okay, number 3. What are you hoping the citizens will contribute to, for, and with Stearns County?
Me?
Yeah.
Okay. What do I hope the citizens will contribute?
Yeah.
Well, obviously, we need support, buy-in, whatever you want to call it. Like Steve said, some of our previous administrations weren't as, I don't want to say open, but as accessible. And that's one thing I like to do. Being from Stearns County, having worked in a number of smaller communities in Stearns County, and having worked patrol for 13 years, I know a ton of people out there. And a lot of times I would see the sheriff sitting in the office, like, thinking to myself, what are you doing here? Go out there and talk to these people. Go to Charlie's Cafe. Go to Painesville and Melrose or St. Cloud and Wake Park. Go just have lunch, and they all brought their lunch in and sat in the break room. They actually sat in the sheriff's office and had lunch. I thought to myself, as an elected official, why aren't you out there at least getting a feel for what the citizens are expecting of you? Maybe give them some feedback, give them some updates, things of that nature. So obviously that's something I want to do. I want to be out there. We've got, just like Sheriff Goodmanson, I work directly with him and the chief deputy. We've got 2 other lieutenants. We run the operation today. We do 98% of the work. We kind of just, run it by the sheriff. Are you good with this? Are you comfortable with that? And if he is, we move forward, or we make a change, we make an adjustment. For the rest of the time, as sheriff, I'd be out there. I'm driving around, I'm not writing speeding tickets, it's not my thing. But we'll be out there, going to not just restaurants, but showing up at calls, giving support to the officers, encouraging them to do a good job. Sometimes, even when I was a patrol supervisor, I would show up and maybe the patrol officer was having a tough day, or maybe was a little overwhelmed that day, and I would kind of just step in and start the conversation over with the victim or the suspect, and it would always seem to have a positive impact on that interaction. Maybe because they thought, well, I've got a sergeant here now, maybe things will get better. Well, they really didn't, he still went to jail, but at least they felt like, I've got this guy's here, and then the deputy might say, well, maybe I should reroute my conversation with this fellow a little bit, or this gentleman. So that's what I would like to do. And I think there's a ton of information. There's rarely that I go out in a uniform and even have lunch. They see that white uniform and they say, that guy's got he must know something, he's a lieutenant or something. I'll talk to him. I'll ask him a question. And it's sometimes as simple as, what's going on with this dope house down the street? And, you just can't always tell them what's going on. But we'll look into that, even though we're going to do a search warrant 3 days from now. But, we don't share that with them. I mean, that's really what I think the citizens want. And, I love doing that. And, going out and just being, you kind of got to be a regular guy and accessible. So that's what I hope to get feedback and, be able to apply some of that information out.
Sweet.
Steve.
Yes, poor Steve.
So to piggyback a little bit off of what Bob said, I do agree that and it's, Bob is a lieutenant and I'm not lumping him into that, but I do believe our past administration definitely built up a wall around themselves, and he is correct, they would eat in the office up there, eat lunch, and I always flabbergasted, we would have training days with the administration, and we'd all go to, say, Howie's for lunch, or Taco John's, and there's an opportunity for them to just come and sit down with the employees, and I know there's a ranking structure, and you don't have to be friends with them, you don't have to hang out with them, but I do think it helps for them to see you as a real person, so I do agree with some of that as far as getting out of the office. I have every intention, if I'm the sheriff, to not be in the office. I have firm belief that if you put the right people underneath you, I should be able to drive away from the sheriff's office and go have a caramel roll at Charlie's in Freeport, like Bob said, and talk to the citizens, and not expect the jail to be burning down as I'm driving out of town type of thing.
Don't leave for too long.
Well, there's always the phone to get me. But I am a huge believer, and I'm a huge believer in face-to-face like we're doing now. I'd rather go and sit down with people and talk to them than communicate via Facebook or Twitter or phones or whatever. I know sometimes it has to happen. I'm also not devoid of the fact that Stearns County is a big operation. That's a huge jail. It's a big budget. There's a lot going on, and you will have office time. I do expect there to be office time as the sheriff, but I have every intention to try and continue with. I'm in charge of our SWAT team right now. We just were out. Bob was there, but we were just out at 3 o'clock in the morning doing a warrant in Freeport yesterday. I'm the commander of that team. Not really likely to give that up if I can help it as the sheriff. I'm young enough and I'm healthy enough, and I like the tactical side of things once in a while. I'm going to continue to go to those trainings and do that. I say that now. Now, granted, if there's a bunch of stuff going on, I may have to give that up, but I have every intention of being out there and still doing the job with the guys once in a while, and the girls, and not just ending up in an office. And I do think it's super important to get out into the public because, again, like I said at the very first question, if I'm not out there, I firmly believe that people are not going to get in their cars if they live out towards Melrose Sauk Center and drive all the way down the interstate, deal with the parking meters, to come into the sheriff's office to yell at me about something our office did wrong, or to tell me something good that we did. If I don't get out there, and I like to call it a mobile open door policy, that's what I'd like to incorporate, is get out into the public, hold some town hall meetings. I've been here 22 years and I don't know that we've ever done as a sheriff, where the sheriff has gone out to a community center out in the public in Freeport or Melrose or wherever, and just, set it up for an hour, and if nobody shows up, awesome, we're doing a great job. If people show up and talk to me, even better. But just kind of tell them this is the direction the sheriff's office is going. This is how many outstanding warrants we have. This is the current drug trend, crime trend, kind of a Q&A thing, and just give it for an hour. And I think that's a doable thing over 4 years as a sheriff, to get to every little location, and I want to do that and be part of the community, basically. So.
You know, my travels, I've been spending a lot of my time lately out in the west end of the county. And I've heard several times, words to the effect that basically, you know, from the folks that live out there, that the county line doesn't end just west of St. Joe or south of St. Augusta. You know, I hear words like that a lot, and I think there's areas of the county that feel really neglected. And much like I would do if elected sheriff internally, as far as trying to pull together some kind of labor management team to try to reduce the number of grievances that are occurring within the sheriff's office, I would also want to do that on kind of an external side and bring in and develop some kind of a community group, various stakeholder groups from within the county come together on what some of those issues are, how can we communicate better, and I would hope to have some support from the community in doing those kinds of things and getting that kind of feedback. It's one of the, when I went to Wade Park, there were some folks that thought I was nuts because there was a lot of internal issues in the mid-2000s in Wade Park. But I took that as a challenge, and one of the key things that I did there was bring the stakeholder group together. We had property managers and business owners, and that was huge when it came to developing a staffing plan for our agency going forward. So that kind of community input or county input, if you will, from a variety of different groups would be really, really critical in my view.
All right, number 4. Are there changes within the sheriff's office that are needed? If so, what are they? And Steve first,
I'll go. You know, I think there's change. You guys are all business owners. I think if you don't change, you don't evolve, and your business doesn't keep growing. And I look at the sheriff's office, and you should look at the sheriff's office as a business. We're in the business of public safety and people, community, basically. You know, and I think if it's not changes, it's not like we're doing anything bad. It's not like we have bad things going on in our sheriff's office. But there's definitely things that we can do to change to kind of get more modern. Technology's always one step ahead of us in law enforcement and public safety. And you know, and the unfortunate truth is probably a lot like with businesses. Money is always you know, we could have the best equipment, the best computers, the best everything if we had money. But you obviously have a budget that you have to work within. But I do think you know, again, I'm going to go back to one of the biggest changes I think is we need to be more out there in the community, just more doing stuff. I have, like these guys, I've talked to every police chief. General complaint is, you know, we don't see the sheriff's office. You guys come on one city property or one city line, drive right through town, right through the other one. You don't stop and talk to us. You don't sometimes come to do demos with us. You don't come to do, you know, and my understanding is we've been invited to some of these things and they just don't even get an answer from us, which I think is completely wrong. So if there was going to be a change that I was going to make, it's going to definitely try to get us into a more of a community-oriented type of police agency.
Bob?
Sure. Like Steve said, there's things that you can always change. I look at the sheriff's office as the way I've done it, or the way I've worked through it in the last 27 years, whatever, 25 years, is that this county, the sheriff's office is an office of the county that's supportive of law enforcement. We have a goal, we have a job to do, and that's number one, to provide the best security and safety for the citizens of Stearns County. But beyond that, we're also the county. We're the ones that are the backup to everybody else. We recently had a double homicide in Paynesville. We went out there, we assigned all our investigators everything they needed to help Paynesville investigate their homicides, and we luckily had a positive result. Wade Park had a homicide a few months ago. We threw everything we had at it, backed up their investigators, and made sure that we had a positive, we did everything we could to get a positive result out of that, and we did. So yeah, those are things that we need to continue to do. We can always improve on things a little bit better, like we kind of all said, get out there more, be more accessible, be more community orientated. As leader of our drone team, and I always try to manage to stick drone or UAV in every conversation I have, which is
he does.
those little things that fly around. I had a hard time getting the county board to get some buy-in on that. But we've used that thing, and hopefully you saw the county board presentation I did just last week, I think it was. You know, we've used that tool for many, many searches, different kinds of operations. We'll use it today for searching for the missing fellow in the river. We're assisting other agencies, other departments, you know, even our surveyor department, we're documenting ditch work. So yeah, we need to reach out more, be more accessible to people, other departments in the county, other people out in the communities. But the bigger challenge here is things we need to improve on. We've got big challenges. The next sheriff is going to have to probably build a new jail. Our current jail is 30 years old. It's filled for about the last 15 years. We currently have 30 inmates average, or kind of average 30 to 40 inmates housed out every single day of the year at $30 to $50 per person. It's a huge bill. And we've remodeled the jail, kicked the can down the road a little bit, but that's something that's coming in 2021. The administration center is paid for, and the next thing is the jail. So the new sheriff is going to have to prepare for that, and that's going to be a big part of the job for the new sheriff and his administration, to start working in that direction. And it's not, when you say jail, that's 2 years of planning before you turn a shovel in dirt. That's a big deal. So that's going to be a lot of time dedicated to that, unfortunately, but it is something that has to be done. This is a plan that has to be looked forward for the next 40 years. So there's big challenges out there. It's an improvement that helps with staff, loyalty, and just being glad to come to work. We've got a better facility. We got, we're not completely full every single day of the week, which we are now. So we're looking down the road. We're looking at 20, 30, 40 years down the road, and those are some of the big challenges we have, and that's where I would head as sheriff.
I was thinking about this the other day. When I started my career 26 years ago, 27 years ago, the job was more about law enforcement. We went to bar fights, and we went to domestics and DUIs, but today is different. The challenges that we have and the issues are more complex. We're dealing with sex trafficking issues. We're dealing with mental health issues, juvenile youth homelessness, and I think that it necessitates a different kind of response, a different way of policing and providing services. And we really cannot continue to work kind of in our silos. And I've been a part of some really neat collaborations in the last couple of years, sex trafficking being one of them, working with Janelle Kendall's office. I mean, we have meetings now, and I go to those meetings in her conference room, and it's law enforcement is there, county commissioners are there, Centric Care is there, and various victim advocates are. I think that is what we need to do better, and working with our different partners on this. I believe the sheriff's office historically, and I think Steve and Bob have a great philosophy, but I don't know that it's always been there as far as, and I think the focus of the sheriff's office has been more internally focused. And I think that the sheriff, as kind of the lead law enforcement agency in the county, needs to have an eye for their police department partners, the police chiefs. I don't think that relationship between the sheriff's office and the PDs is what it should be, what it could be. And if it was, how much public safety would be enhanced. We do need to take a more problem-oriented focus to things. We do need to dispatch differently. Closest available unit is one of my passions. And I've heard over and over again where there's a city unit that's willing to go on a call where somebody's hurt and they're called off. And I'm like, that cannot happen. We're putting life over statistics or turf or jurisdiction. That cannot happen. So clearly there needs to be some changes. I think the sheriff's office needs to be more involved in some of these areas of sex trafficking. Now, under Sheriff Gudmundsson, they've taken a big step forward, and we've got Robbie Tyson, a county investigator, working half-time. But prior to Don, they weren't really involved in that issue. They need to be. And I was recently appointed to the Central Minnesota Mental Health Board, And there are issues related to mental health and how we respond to individuals. So that involves officer training. But we also need to come up with some better solutions and make better referrals, because that has direct implications when it comes to the jail. There are probably individuals in jail right now. Technically, they may have committed some kind of crime, but in reality would probably be better served in some other way. Maybe it's counseling, better medication management, whatever it might be. And so the county, the sheriff's office, needs to be engaged in the various healthcare providers, Centric Care, Minnesota Mental Health Center, to try to address those kinds of issues and kind of think outside the box on some of those things. There's a lot of changes that I would like to see. If I'm elected sheriff, quarterly, maybe semi-annual, there'll be a deputy or a supervisor at every township board meeting and every city council. In some cases, they have contracts and that occurs naturally, but in a lot of cases, they don't. But those townships are starving for attention from the county, particularly the sheriff's office. Closest available unit, I mentioned that, and so again, there's a number of things that I could talk about when it comes to change. Those are just a few.
All right, last one. We'll start with David. Generally or specifically, what are your goals if and when you become sheriff?
I think that one of the main goals or main concerns that I have right now is our records management system. We have been stuck with a records management system that, in my opinion, has never really worked that well for us. I don't think that we are using technology and information to its fullest extent possible. We've been with, Vision Mobile, and I got bought out by TriTech. When TriTech took over, I was optimistic that things would change. I am no longer so. I think that we spent a lot of money on the system 20-some years ago now, and it's never really worked that well. And so we really need to have a long-range plan on the technology side, records management system. Stearns County is way too big to have just units kind of randomly driving around. We need to give them the ability to retrieve data out of the system. We need supervisors to be able to crime map and see where some of the hotspot activity is taking place and direct resources to those areas. That is an area that I think we need to dispatch differently, and we can do that in ways that enhance public safety in some of those areas. In every job, going back to my experience in the private sector as well as in the public sector, having a clear mission and vision statement for an organization is really important. That's one area where I would like to have not only input from staff, but also from the residents of the community in developing a clear mission vision statement. Not one that I just pull offline, but that really has input from stakeholders from a variety of different areas. I mentioned a labor management advisory team I think would be really good. I think there's some things that we need to do to improve clearance rates on county cases. That includes, how we investigate cases and the thoroughness of our follow-up and our report writing. I think we also need to have a lower percentage of cases that are where the county attorney takes no action. In Wake Park, we have the lowest in the area, and that's one of the advantages we have is some of the financial crime that we have, and a lot of the crimes that we solve are on camera or video or whatever, so we have an advantage there. But I think there's some things that need to be done to improve clearance rates and cases that are no action is taken. And I think the bottom line too is just increased collaboration. The sheriff's office needs to be a more active participant in some of these issues that we're facing. And when they do that, I think we can make a real difference.
Thank you, Steve. I agree as well. I mean, Dave hit on a lot of good points. Some of the points that Dave talked about with records management and TriTech and Visionaire are granular and things of day-to-day operations that we deal with. We're kind of at the point in the sheriff's office where technology came rushing through the front door in the late 80s, early 90s, and now we've morphed into the next phase. We've used our records management system and our mobile computing and our different type of applications that we use every day out in the field and in the office, to the point that we've kind of outgrown it. And it's technology from like I said, from the 90s. We can't get a phone to last more than 3 years. We're still on the same platform that we've been for 2 decades. So we recognize that, and being good stewards of county money, we want to. These systems are hugely expensive. They're in the millions of dollars. So we want to squeeze everything out of it that we can. And I know some of the communities have had frustrations with that technology, and we're absolutely on board with that. We want to get the best next platform out there. Again, looking to the next 20 and 30 years, if possible, not the next 5 or 10 years or cell phone years. Cell phone life is like 3 years, I guess. But so yeah, there's a lot of things like that. Dispatching. I was in charge of the dispatch center. I still kind of oversee it for project management. But yeah, dispatching we're still kind of caught in the 80s and actually in some ways the 70s technology, one dispatcher for one group. We really need to kind of change our thinking about that. We're kind of stuck on, St. Joe should only go to this call, and when they get to that line they should stop. Well, they really don't need to. They could go over the line. And people in the communities have realized that they're not really concerned if a St. Joe officer, a Wade Park officer, or a St. Cloud officer comes. They just want a car and a police officer to show up at their door. And it could be a deputy, it could be a trooper, it could be a DNR officer. So we need to kind of change our thinking with that. One of the things that, having been in charge of dispatch for a number of years, is I know that we need, as part of our jail expansion, a new dispatch center to some degree, whether it's going to be in that building or a whole nother building, working with a major partner in our community right now. Not really at liberty to say who it is, CentraCare, but we're looking to combine some of our resources together. CentraCare is a great partner to have with you, and they have needs for public safety. We have needs for public safety. So we're working our way down that path, trying to find the best solution for how we can change the overall face of how we dispatch today. So that's something that's in the future. A number of different things I'd like to change. Being in the sheriff's office, being an administrator for 11 years, there's things that I could talk about for 2 hours here, but I'd bore you to death, and you just want to run out screaming. But having been there, I know what these issues are. I can hit the ground running. Some of them are old. I shouldn't say old. John Santa was a great sheriff. I loved him dearly. He's a good friend. But you always look at that and you say, I could do something differently. I don't necessarily like the way he's doing that. It's not a bad way, but I think there's a better way. So I'm going to expand on that, change some of the operations, how we do it. We've already, expanded under Sheriff Goodmanson, we expanded the investigative division, put a direct supervisor in there, so that person, that lieutenant, has direct supervision of all those cases, can make sure that they're being handled appropriately and getting through the system, as opposed to the old way. You couldn't clear it in a day or two, just put it aside, and don't worry about it. You get assigned a case, you're going to finish that case, and we're going to get some resolution to it, whether it's positive or negative. It's going to be finished one way or another. So those are things that we've already done just in the past 12 months with Sheriff Goodmanson. I'm going to continue to work on those as sheriff. I'm going to keep building on those, take good experience from his, they call him the grandfather of law enforcement, I think. So I'm going to keep building on some of those ideas. Not all of them, but some of them. And what worked in Dakota County may not work in Stearns County, but we're going to try to, take some good with the bad and build on that stuff. So again, having worked with 3 of the sheriffs, I've got a good insight on what I think is going to work, what's going to be good for Stearns County for the future. I'm going to be here. I'm not going anywhere. And I appreciate your time today. And we'll let Steve have a shot here.
If I was elected sheriff, I'm going to go back to the community thing. Definitely some collaboration with the community. Another thing is, we have, Bob said it, about 200 employees. I guarantee all those 200 employees all have ideas. They have some ideas that are good ideas. There's people that are coming out of school with better ideas than what I probably have. I would be willing to listen to those ideas and sometimes implement them depending on what it is. We did a study, the county hired a company to come in and do a study. It lays out a lot of stuff in there, clearance rates, call loads. And it's funny because some of the stuff that's in the study is literally stuff that I know because I'm in charge of our patrol officers union that we've brought forward in the past to administration, but it kind of fell on deaf ears. Simple things like we're getting a lot of calls during the daytime. And we used to keep all our people more or less on the night shift for DWIs and stuff, but we were getting our butts handed to us on the daytime. They have now started a day power car, which is like additional people that come on at noon to help us with those calls on the day shift. Those are ideas, and I'm not lying to you, we had 10 years ago that we brought forward, they just didn't go anywhere because we were feeling it, we were knowing it, and we were out there working it, and so those little things like that. The staff has ideas to work on. I'm not going to be a sheriff, I guess, that's going to be so high ego driven that I'm not going to listen to the people. I'm not going to, I'll listen to the citizens. I'm listening to some probation officers now that have some ideas on maybe reducing some jail bed space. There's lots of things that we can do to try and better ourselves. I said it earlier, I look at this as like a business. We have to evolve like a business or we're going to lose our customers and our customer base. I look at remarketing our sheriff's office basically if I'm elected. There's, like Bob said, there's a lot of different things, a lot of different aspects. We, by state statute, are the chief law enforcement agency in each county, the sheriff's office is, and I look at that as we're like Big Brother. We should be supporting all these smaller agencies, the St. Joe's, the Melroses, the Avons, things like that. And not just support like we're backing you up on a call or we're helping you, but with investigative stuff, with technological stuff. We should be the ones with we have an IS department. Work with them to come up with the best next laptop computer for the squad cars and then push that out to the agencies. Goes, here's what we found through doing our research or whatever. Those type of things. I intend to just work more with the agencies, communicate more is my big key and always will be. Again, child safety is a big thing with me. The schools, getting some influence into the schools, even if it's at a part-time level to start with. At least on my day shift, I encourage my people to get out of the car and go talk to business owners in the small towns, especially the ones that we are the primary law enforcement. I don't expect them to do it in St. Cloud or even in Wake Park. They're not going to go to Coles and introduce themselves. But the Freeports, the St. Augustas, I told them I'd rather have them do that than write tickets, quite honestly. There's always time for tickets, there's overtime and stuff for that. I'd rather have them do the citizen connection way more than the other side of the law enforcement. And I tell them, I said, I don't expect you to remember everybody's name that you go in to talk to, but I guarantee they'll remember the day that you came in to talk to them because we don't do enough of that. David mentioned human trafficking a few times. He and I did attempt to get that attached to VoigtJohnson at one point. I don't know where that kind of fell apart at one for whatever reason. And not that it needs to be part of VoigtJohnson. They have a task force now, but I think we could maybe increase our officer that's doing it part-time to more of a full-time status and work on more of our at-risk youth that are runaways and things like that. To do some of that screening. So I would continue with what we're kind of doing, but kind of build upon it. I would agree with Bob that Sheriff Goodmanson came in and did a lot of things, and I would continue with some of those things, but again, is his way the right way? Not necessarily. Is my way the right way? No, and I don't think any three of us sitting up here can sit here and tell you that we are the end all, the be all, the fix all. We are just we're just human beings like everyone else, and we've got ideas, but we need to build upon those ideas and take input from the public and take input from our employees. So, and thanks, Katie, for having us, and all of you. So.
Right on time.